My name's Liam, I'm an alcoholic. Um, yeah, my sobriety date is January 25th of 2022. I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor. Worked all 12 steps with him. Um, I'm actively engaged in working the traditions with him right now. Um, I've got sponsees, which keep seeming to add up. I've up to four, one of which is gotten all the way to the 12th step. So um, I've got service commitments in H&I, and I've been a part of intergroup here in Sonoma County, which is where Dwight and I live. Um, and yeah, AA has its hands all over my life, fingerprints all over my life today. So a little bit about me. I don't want to focus too much on my drunk log. I can talk for a long period of time, and I really appreciate the timer keeping me from doing that. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, very beautiful, you know, world-renowned place to go, enjoy the lake, world-class skiing, that kind of stuff. Um, have two loving parents who've been together, 30 years. Um, I Not a lot of direct trauma, I think, from them. Um, I think some of theirs may have been projected onto my sister and I, but like all in all, like lovely home life. Nothing that I could ever try and have the excuse that that is the reason that I'm an alcoholic by any means. I think from a young age, I can see that though I was seeking external validation from other people. I just really, yeah, something wasn't feeling whole within me. Um, if you're new or not, welcome. Happy birthday to all those celebrating. This program has really, for me, given me so much more than just physical sobriety. Um, because alcoholism to me is not about the drink itself. Addiction is not. It goes so much more to that than the obsession. It's that I have a spiritual malady. Um, and I didn't know that I had a spiritual malady until I caught alcoholism here in the rooms of AA. So, um, yeah, very quick. I started drinking in high school. I think my first and my second time drinking kind of show the range of what my drinking looked like. First time I was with a couple buddies who both ended up more drunk than I was. I was holding their heads in the toilet at the end of the night. Certainly got pretty drunk, but all in all, managed myself, didn't make a total, um, didn't embarrass myself too much, anything like that. Second time, I ended up at a party where I blacked out, I puked all over somebody's couch, and I woke up the next morning face down on a bathroom floor in somebody else's clothing, not knowing where I was. Which is to say that not every time I drink am I going to make a total ass of myself. Not every time I drink did it look absolutely horrible. But what I know for me as an alcoholic is that if I drink sooner or later, whether it's tomorrow or 6 months from now, I am going to make catastrophic decisions that are just going to lead me back to a place of incomprehensible moralization. Um, and the only way to prevent myself from getting there is from abstinence from alcohol. Um, what's more is that I can really stay in line, and how I keep myself from getting to that first drink is through maintaining my spiritual condition, as it is outlined in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That has been my solution to the problems that uh, have come up for me the last couple of years, which have certainly had their ups and downs and plenty of hardship. Um, Sobriety doesn't mean that life just gets better. Life still happens. Hard things still happen. Um, I just have better tools to deal with life today. So, um, yeah, briefly, I went to college in Oregon. I was a marketing major. In my business school, though, they had a hospitality program. Within that, they offered a wine certificate. So I was able to take wine classes for business credit, the first of which was wine appreciation, and quickly developed an appreciation for wine. It was like, 2 hours of getting the teacher's life story and maybe 1 hour of actual education and drinking the whole time. And, the nerd in me thought that the geography and the science behind it was interesting. And the alcoholic in me loved having an excuse to drink and to justify my drinking as something educational. And I used that to basically I bankrolled it into doing all my up division marketing classes on the alcohol industry. I did my college internship for the largest alcohol distribution company in the world. And after college, came down to Sonoma County to work in the wine industry and in world class wine country. So, um, my first real consequence, there certainly was some other consequences. Like I said, there was plenty of times in high school and in college that I embarrassed myself, made an ass of myself from drinking. But my first real consequence came about a month into living here in Sonoma County, um, prior to, shortly prior to COVID. Got my first DUI. I was driving home from work. I had my phone kind of on my center console and it slipped down underneath my brake pedal. And I reached down to grab it and swerved off the road, crashed my car. Um, and it took a little while and I wasn't really at the scene, but eventually the cops found me and I blew like a .08, then a .10. Like I was right around the legal limit. Um, and, working in the alcohol industry and really just maybe growing up in maybe a ski culture where drinking's very common. DUIs are not that uncommon. Like I thought I got unlucky, thought, hey, I just got this out of my way. Didn't think twice about being an alcoholic. I thought of, you know, kind of the joking ways of being an alcoholic that, you know, winemakers might say, like, uh, I like to drink, an alcoholic spends his day drinking the same thing. A winemaker, only difference is he spends his day drinking many things. And yeah, I didn't see a problem with my drinking, um, or other substances really. I didn't do a ton of other things, mostly because of my heart condition, but um, even with those things, alcohol truly was the root problem for me. Um, so that also put me into more isolation because I was new to this area. I didn't know anybody, and um, I was getting free alcohol all the time. So I started drinking more by myself at home. COVID hit maybe 8 or 9 months later. I went back to Lake Tahoe with my parents and 15 cases of wine. And my days during COVID looked like, if I was working with my dad, I might be drinking a few beers at his bike shop in the afternoon, cocktail hour with mom and dad at 5 o'clock, bottle of wine with dinner. And I'm, getting high the whole time as well. So pretty just much crossfaded every day. The days I wasn't working, I was pretty much doing the same thing while doing something outside with my friends. Um, I moved back to wine country in summer of 2021 and went back to work in a winery. Lived with a brewer and a winemaker. And yeah, definitely had plenty of alcohol at my disposal anytime I wanted it. Um, and my days in that last 6 months of my drinking career looked like waking up with probably a half a beer next to my bed, finishing that off to kind of get rid of any headache I had, going getting a bunch of caffeine to wake me up, um, feeling a little extra jittery, couldn't really talk about wine too much. So get to work, maybe have a little sip of wine to calm things down, stop drinking most of the time by about 4 o'clock, so that I'd be sober up enough by 6 when I drove home, and then going home, getting high, drinking the rest of the night, and doing that every day. And I thought, kind of managing my life around these substances, but Um, another alcoholic pointed out to me that really those substances were managing me. And for me, what came to a head was I was driving home from work one night in January of 2022. Very slow day in wine country. I was the only person working that day. I had one customer all day. They were at like 4:30, and it was a former employee. So I had to be there until 4:30, but I had to get there at 10. And nobody came in the door all day, and a little bit of wine, a little bit of wine, a little bit of wine. And, I don't really know how much I drank that day. I don't really particularly remember leaving work. I was kind of in a brownout where I remember certain things. And I took this little bit less than straight normal route home that night. Um, and I went to turn left on a corner that I didn't realize there was a tree obstructing my view of the cross traffic. And I T-boned a guy rolling through the stop sign and flipped his truck. I was freaking out. I was like, did I just, kill this person? I got out, I broke his windshield, got him out of his car. He was alive and seemingly mostly okay. Some more sober heads arrived on the scene, and I ran about 100 yards down the road and hid the bush to call my parents, call my best friend, because I didn't know what to do, and my fight or flight response was really kicking in. And I didn't know if I was gonna go to jail that night or if I was going to try and flee the country or what. I hit that moment, that truest moment in my life of fear, of incomprehensible demoralization, of what have I done. Um, I ended up walking back over the scene, going to jail that night. Um, and the first time of like the surrender, I remember calling my dad from jail and saying, I think I need to go to rehab. And he's like, but you're not an alcoholic. And um I I think that is just so interesting of a thought because it doesn't I think when I came into the rooms, I thought an alcoholic was somebody like my uncle who 6 months prior to my second DUI drank himself to death. Um, you know, I didn't think of an alcoholic as somebody like me, somebody who seemingly was functioning from my point of view. And I didn't think at that moment I was an alcoholic. But, in our literature, I really learned that, um, you know, through going through the other alcoholics that, and through continuous honesty, openness, willingness, um, to really do the work, I came to identify with this program. I came to identify with an alcoholic. So, being an alcoholic. So, yeah, what happened and how I got there was I knew something needed to change. I didn't think I was an alcoholic, but I didn't want myself and I didn't want anybody else to really think that I was a bad person because I really questioned that in that moment. And um, I started doing outpatient rehab, I started doing therapy, and I just did whatever I could to try and make that situation right. Um, Now, I say that doesn't mean it all happened overnight for me. I started going to some Zoom meetings. I'd gone to a couple in-person meetings at first, thought, no, I don't like this. This is scary. So I went pretty much exclusively to Zoom meetings for a couple more months. Um, and slowly had a little bit more openness and a little bit more willingness to branch out, find people, talk to people. This meeting that at the time was hybrid, a young person's meeting, some people have been encouraging me to come check it out in person. And one night I didn't really have much of an excuse, and I thought, why not? And I went there, and I don't know at all what the person who was secretarying the meeting, I mean, speaking at the meeting said, but I do know that somebody else in the audience, um, he talked about having 3 DUIs. Um, and that was the first time I heard somebody else have my story. And we connected that night. He convinced me to come check out something the next day called SWACYPAA, which is Sonoma County's Young People in AA, on their business meeting, which is actually where I met Dwight that next day. Um, and that was integral to me finding the willingness to actually do the work. Um, that was maybe 3 months into my sobriety. And a couple months later, through starting to go to events, starting to find a community here in AA, that gentleman who introduced me to YPAW became my sponsor, and we got into the work. And the growth that I was starting to experience went from being incremental to exponential. Um, for those that are new, or who haven't really gotten to the book, the meetings are great. For me today, meetings are not where I go for my sobriety. Meetings are go where I go to be of service, where I go to connect with newcomers, where I go for unity. Recovery of this program is in this book, going through the 12 steps with another alcoholic, um, both with sponsors and with your sponsees. And yeah, for me, I think, to go briefly through what happened, it's in step one, we identify that we're an alcoholic and our lives are unmanageable. We do an inventory and realize, where we identify character defects that, uh, again, realize we cannot control those things and our life's unmanageable. And by the end of it, by the time I get into 10, 11, and 12, I really realize that I can't control anything. The only things I can control in this world are my actions and my attitudes. Um, I can't control my feelings. I can't control anybody else. And that sounds, there's some fear in that for sure, right? I think in my inventory, I realized that most of my fears have to do with fear of the unknown and fear of things I can't control. And most of my resentments are less with the people that I resent and more with the way that I let that affect me. Um, yeah, I here I am about 2.5 years later, and my spiritual condition, growth that I see now today from working this program is continuously working the steps, continuously doing 10, 11, and 12, which is the maintenance of this program, with 6 and 7 in mind, um, because I'm seeing the layers of the onion get peeled away. I'm seeing character defects that I continue to identify, and um, and praying for relief. Not every day is good. I don't do this program perfectly. I don't think anybody can do this program perfectly. Really, what it takes is looking to try and do. I have to do step one perfectly, and I have to strive to do everything else as best I can. Um, Physical sobriety is the bare minimum. I didn't get sober to be miserable. Um, and I will be miserable if I don't stay in the solution. And the solution to me is in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, I want to finish one of my favorite lines is it's on page 68, which for those of you who are not in the steps is at the tail end of the fourth step and reading through how you go through the fourth step. And it says, perhaps basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We're in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us, and humbly rely on him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? Um, I'm only able to match calamity with serenity if I stay out of my own will and I stay in God's will. Um, and yeah, that's 20 minutes, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much.